Mr. President, I rise today to applaud my colleagues for being in the Christmas spirit. I've never seen so many gifts and presents given out in one bill. Let's be clear, we aren't voting on just a $1.1 trillion spending bill called the Omnibus. We're not voting on just that bill. That bill by itself could have been acceptable because it helps veterans, middle-class families, our Defense Department, our border security, and a host of other valuable federal programs. But we aren't voting on just the omnibus bill. We are forced to vote on both the omnibus and the tax extender package that adds an additional, unpaid for, $680 billion of gifts for special interest groups. We're giving out $680 billion in irresponsible tax breaks, Christmas gifts to every special interest and corporation that asked for one. We gave Christmas presents to millionaire race car drivers, and motorcycle riders, film and television, theater producers, and even racehorse owners. Now, don't get me wrong, Mr. President. I like going to the movies, and I like riding my motorcycle, and even going horseback riding from time to time. But I don't think many middle-class Americans would be happy to know we gave away billions of dollars in tax gifts to millionaires and billionaires at their expense. And they should be especially upset that we did it by mortgaging the futures of their children and grandchildren. I've always said we're writing checks their kids can't cash. I think a lot of Americans would want to know how we got here. How do we get to the point that we force ourselves to vote on a $1 trillion spending bill that is 2,000 pages long at the end of the year just so we can all rush home for the holidays? How do we add a $700 billion tax extender package that gives the wealthiest among us the gifts they want? The truth is we stopped following regular order. A lot of us only heard about a regular order. We've never actually governed by it. I only know about regular order because Senator Robert C. Byrd told me how this package worked and how the place used to work before I joined the Senate, before he passed away. We used to talk about how things would happen. He would be disappointed in us all, on both sides, Democrats and Republicans, that we have run the body he loves so much the way we have. Here's what regular order is supposed to look like, Mr. President. After receiving the President's budget, which we do, starting our new Congress, Congress is supposed to respond with our view of what the budget should look like. Then we work through 12 appropriation committees and their subcommittees to develop 12 separate appropriation bills. The entire body should then consider each individual bill and make sure they meet the demands of our constituents while staying within the means of our set budget. We need to do that 12 separate times so we can honestly tell the American public that we were responsible with our money, and we can answer to that. Instead, we are jammed at the last minute with a $1.1 trillion spending bill that is over 2,000 pages long and considers the priorities of those 12 committees all at one time, without talking about, debating individually. Not only that, as if that's not enough, Mr. President, this year we have a special treat of adding on a $700 billion gift tax Christmas tree package, instead of actually doing the tax reform that all of us talk about but never actually get around to. At some point, we're going to have to start setting our priorities based on our values, budgeting based on our priorities, and being responsible stewards of the taxpayers' money. It will happen sooner or later. Instead of working throughout the year in a bipartisan way, we continue to govern by crisis, one after another. We kick the can down the road all year and then add in more than $500 billion in gifts to our special interest friends. And both parties are to blame. This is not just a partisan issue. Both parties are at fault. The Christmas gift will add over $2 trillion to our debt over the next 2 decades. My grandfather, Papa Joe, always taught me to base our priorities on our values and then budget based on your priorities. Well, we sure are showing the American people what our values are with this bill. We pay a lot of lip service on this floor, on cable news and on campaign trails about our priorities. But when it comes down to it, and time to govern based on the priorities, all we get is lip service. We had choices to make in this bill, Mr. President. We could have helped middle-class families or could have given tax breaks to multinational companies, notably the major banks, and parking their money abroad. We could choose to make college debt-free. Or we could have chose to help the film, television, and theater producers deduct the cost of their movies, shows, and plays. We could choose to double our border security. Or we could allow racehorses to be depreciable. We could choose to give every American family $5,600 in tax relief. Or we could have chose to give favorable tax treatment to racing complexes. We could have chosen to keep the promise that President Truman made to our patriotic coal miners back in 1946 and protected their pension and health care guarantees. Or we could choose to give $680 billion in tax breaks to special interest groups, millionaires, and billionaires. Mr. President, we chose poorly. We truly chose poorly. Democrats and Republicans both say that we need to help our hardworking American families, but we have completely ignored the most hardworking people out there that I know as our coal miners, and we should be ashamed of ourselves. Now, I know that some of my colleagues don't like coal. They think they don't need it and want to get rid of it, but this isn't about coal. It isn't about coal. It's about the brave men and women who gave and who have gone into those mines every day for over a century to power our economy, produce the weapons to fight our wars, and provide the energy that we all depend on today. Made us the greatest country on earth, superpower. Basically, with this God-given resource that we had, these brave men and women worked hard, very patriotically, to make sure this country had the energy it needed to defend itself, to build the industrial might that we did, to be the superpower of the world. They were guaranteed, Mr. President, affordable health care and dignity in retirement in return for their blood, sweat, and tears that they shed for this country. That was a guarantee, a written guarantee in 1946. They were guaranteed the affordable health care and retirement. And I want you to know that today, by not being able to have that in this bill, as laden as it is with all these giveaways and freebies and picking who's getting what and all the millionaires and billionaires, we went back on our promise, Mr. President. We decided to help race car owners, film producers, horse racing professionals, foreign entities, and a host of other special interest groups. But we didn't help our own miners. We did not help our own people. Today we said that despite finding a fiscally responsible way to meet these obligations, our priorities were not in the valuing their service. Mr. President, I cannot stand here and vote for a bill that tells middle-class Americans, students and veterans, doctors and nurses, mothers and fathers, and our seniors that these are our values. They simply are not who we are and what we're about. They are not the values that the good people of West Virginia or Wisconsin or all the other 50 states that we have in this great union basically value. And they are not the values that the greatest generation and our miners fought for. Mr. President, I encourage all my colleagues to vote no and show the American people once and for all that our values and what they should be and the priorities that they really are is about them and not about special interest people and special people that don't need the help. They've already done very well in life. I would hope we'd all think twice before voting on this absolutely irresponsible piece of legislation that adds another $700 billion of debt. Uncalled for.